Ladies and gentlemen, let me have your attention. We're going to call the Economic Development Committee to order. I'm the chair, Curran Price, and I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Marquise Harris-Dawson, Paul Krikorian, and Nuri Martinez. We have an action-packed 4-item agenda. And members, without objection, we'll waive item 3 and 4. There's no objection. That will be the order. Okay, Mr. Clerk, what's our first item?
Item number 1 is a Chief Legislative Analyst and CAO report relative to the proposed Los Angeles Convention Center expansion and modernization project. This item was also referred to the Budget and Personnel Committees. Okay,
we've got one card so far. Any more cards? Card for comment. Let's John Howland. No stranger to this committee. Or any committee. Or this city.
I don't know if I've testified at personnel. So. Good afternoon. I'm John Howland with the Central City Association. I'll be brief. CCA strongly supports the Department of Convention and Tourism Development's goal of positioning the Convention Center as a dominant driver of economic development and local job creation. We believe the expansion and modernization of the Convention Center is critical to increase tourism in the convention business in Los Angeles. The modernization plans provide a Convention Center anchor hotel, reposition Pico Boulevard as an important gateway to downtown, and improve the usable space at the Convention Center. CCA supports the Convention Center expansion and futurization project and encourages the city and this committee and this council to move forward expeditiously with the modernization by supporting the CLA recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me just say I've got dozens of letters from stakeholders and others expressing similar sentiment. Laura Hill.
Hi, my name is Laura, and I represent the South Park Business Improvement District. Our district includes the Los Angeles Convention Center in the item of discussion today. South Park's 32-block district also includes the Staples Center, LA Live, and a fast-growing residential population. First and foremost, as a bid, we do not take a stance on projects or developments in the districts. I'm simply here to communicate the positive effects of the LA Convention Center redesign on the DTLA and Los Angeles communities, and to stress the urgency of moving forward with the expansion and redesign process. Since the development of the Staples Center in 1999, there has been an exponentially growing demand for facility usage at the LA Convention Center. The redesign will be valued by residents, tourists, and surrounding businesses, and the economic impact will extend to Los Angeles as a whole. New tax revenues will be generated by attracting more citywide conventions, filling hotel rooms, and beyond. It is only to the city's benefit to move forward with this project as swiftly as possible. It has now been 2 years since the council called for an alternative to the NFL stadium. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Lane.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Adam Lane. I'm here representing the Los Angeles Business Council in support of the contract between Populace and the LA Convention and Tourism Department to revitalize and expand the LA Convention Center. In September, Executive Director Ovram came and spoke to our Legislative Affairs Committee and our leadership, and there was overwhelming support for the plan. There's a shared consensus that revitalizing the Convention Center will be crucial to the economic health of Los Angeles and continuing the booming development in downtown LA right now. What we greatly lack downtown is a sense of connectivity in our streets and our commercial centers. Right now, Angelenos and tourists alike have no real reason to go south of the Staples Center. By developing a convention center that attracts tourism, major vendors and events, and becomes a connected piece of Staples Center and LA Live, downtown can become the major source of attraction and economic development it was meant to be. A city as large and as diverse as LA should not be falling behind the cities such as San Francisco and San Diego in the attractiveness of its convention center. It's crucial we move forward with this contract as soon as possible. We're excited the movement is now part of the city's economic development strategy, and we look forward to supporting any efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, that will close our public comment. Members, I'm told that we need to go back to items 3 and 4. Madam Clerk, do you want to?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Items 3 and 4, there is a quorum of the committee, so if the committee chooses to vote on it and approve it, then it may do so.
Okay, well, let's take a vote.
Okay, and 3 and 4 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Way to work it.
Okay. Item 1, Madam Clerk, would you read that for us? I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 1 is a CLA report and CAO report relative to the proposed Los Angeles Convention Center expansion and modernization project. This item was also referred to the Budget and Personnel Committees.
Okay, this is an exciting item, not just for this committee, but for the whole city. We are all anxious and excited about the prospects of an expanded convention center, a better, more improved convention center, at least one that will help us attract the kind of tourism dollars that we know that we are capable of doing. Some work has been done. BOE has successfully completed negotiations with Populous. We'll hear about that. BOE has also provided a budget and a timeline for project implementation. And separately, we're going to hear, not today, but from the CAO regarding financing options, including public-private partnership. It could be very exciting. So without further ado, why don't we ask the CLA and CAO up to the table. There may be a few questions, and if you can give us a summary of your report and maybe a few.
I'll start. John Wickham with the CLA. Good afternoon. And yes, back on June 30th, the council instructed CLA and CAO to do some additional work and moving this project forward. In addition, council instructed BOE to negotiate a contract with Populous, the architect that was selected in the design competition. Before you is the result of all of that work on the implementation side and the BOE side. BOE has negotiated a contract with Populous. They were very productive negotiation sessions and very, very interesting process. And we have an agreement that's in front of you in our report. In addition, we have several actions related to allowing the everything to kind of get in place because BOE needs some staff in order to actually implement this project. So there are some actions on their side that they'll need to go through in order to hire staff. And there are other contract work that they'll need to do. They'll need to hire a consultant to do the CEQA analysis. They'll be hiring consultants for the construction management side of things as well. So the recommendations in front of you today allow BOE to begin that initial work. In the meantime, the CAO is doing some analysis of the P3 option, and so they will be coming back at some point with some additional information on that. And so our recommendations here don't actually move forward the actual design work yet. We're asking that the notice of proceed be withheld until the P3 report comes back and we have the final action there. But everything does line us up so that once there's a final decision made, everybody will be in place to move forward.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think the intent certainly of the committee was that we were able to move forward in a responsible way. And so I think this does achieve that while we will still evaluate and consider the financing options associated with P3 or some other vehicle. As you said, it does permit us to put pieces in place.
Exactly.
And so that's good. Let me just ask, though, while we do have the CAO with us, when is that P3 report going to be ready for consideration? Everyone is so anxiously awaiting.
We're anxious as well. So we did hire a consultant who specializes in P3s around the nation and, in fact, around the world. We're expected to receive a draft of that next week, and we hope to release a report by the end of the calendar year.
With the study that you're doing, is the convention center going to be developed with the same exhibit space, the same meeting room space as proposed initially?
The instruction that we gave the consultant was to develop a concept that captures as a minimum the amount of space that the current proposal outlines. And we encourage them, if they could identify ways to actually exceed it, to actually present those options to us as well.
And on the contract with Populous, are there any provisions in here that are unusual or different or special that we should be aware of, or is it just sort of a boilerplate agreement?
I'll defer to the city engineer who knows the contract intimately and can answer that question for you.
Good afternoon, Gary Lee Moore, city engineer. I would say this is a typical contract that we use for our consultants. So nothing out of the ordinary in it.
Okay, members, any questions? Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You raised an intriguing point about what goes into the design of this. And this has been something that we've talked about quite a lot with the different permutations of Plan A and AEG's proposal, and now we're moving into the Plan B phase. And the contiguous space issue has always been, something that people have talked about a lot. And I guess what I'm really interested in is trying to figure out how we build a convention center that is going to attract conventions that we want to attract in 2030 and in 2040. And I have not one clue what that is. I don't know how the world is going to be different in 30 years during the life of this convention center, whether the nature of conventions will be different, whether the nature of the infrastructure necessary for conventions will be, I assume it'll be dramatically different. And the old model may or may not be what keeps us competitive 20 years from now or even 10 years from now. So if the one thing I guess I would ask Mr. Santana is, as we're looking at the option of P3s in designing, building, operating, whatever the scope of that P3 ends up being, that we test the marketplace too about, instead of being prescriptive, that we want this kind of convention center and who can deliver it to us. I would hope that we would be open to suggestions that the market brings back to us, because people who have real money to invest and real expertise in this area may be thinking of things that we haven't even thought of about what would make us most competitive in generations to come. So is that something that you would anticipate being a part of this process?
That's a big part of the process. I mean, I think our consultants were informed as to the goals that the city currently has. How, the uses that currently are used for the convention center and the goals that were laid out by the department as well as by the architectural firm and sort of the stakeholders involved so far. But part of their duty is to come back to say whether there's a market for that today. If investors are going to share in the risk of building and something like this, then they need to be confident that in fact a convention center will continue to thrive, not just tomorrow, but as you pointed out, decades to come. And in essence, as you indicated, we are testing the market by asking investors to engage with us and potentially partner with us. We'll see once the consultants come back with their report what they come back with. If they say, we believe there is a market, and this is why we believe there is a market, and this is how you should consider the structure the same or different, then that would be helpful. If they come back and say, we don't find a market at all, that this is a very tough business, it's highly competitive, there's an expectation that government will subsidize to a significant degree convention centers, which has been the business model in the past, then that's information as well, right? So we also gave the consultants direction to think about it as a campus more than just a big box, right? And to look at the organic economic development that's currently occurring right next door in downtown and South Park and sort of the broader community, and how can the city best position itself to take advantage of that organic economic development at this moment in time. So, you know, we're talking about downtown Los Angeles, not downtown Omaha, right? And so the interest in investing in downtown Los Angeles at this particular moment in history is maybe very different than another part of the country. So while convention centers as a whole may be traditionally subsidized by government because of their costs to manage and operate, there may be a time today that folks may be more willing to take that risk because of everything else that's occurring in the neighborhood. So these are all questions that we pose to our experts to help think through and to come back and also to share with what kind of models are being developed around this space, not just nationally but internationally, and how can we take advantage of sort of that direction. The goal that we're trying to achieve here is the same one, that is to have a thriving asset and to have an asset that we can invest in not just today but on an ongoing basis, and to do it in a way where we share the risk with somebody else. Right now we share 100% of the risk. How can we engage in this partnership so that we have private investment to share in that risk with us? There are trade-offs whenever you enter into a partnership, of course, and so we need to know what those trade-offs are, and so ultimately you can make that decision. The other context is, of course, as we write in our report, is under the traditional model, what are the trade-offs for the city? You know, a concern that we raise in our report is the impact it has on our debt capacity, and basically committing the remainder of our debt capacity to one asset at a time where we may have other needs as well. So the question we're posing is, how can we have our cake and eat it too? How can we have a thriving asset convention center that is tied to and integrated into the organic economic development that's occurring in that neighborhood, while at the same time maintaining our debt capacity so we could invest in other areas, and as we've written in our report to your committee on sort of the other ways that we use our debt. So those are the issues we're reconciled. They may come back and say, you know what, you're asking for too much is impossible. That is just not something you could actually do. And if that's the case, then it's important to know that, so then you have to have the options before you. That's not what we've gotten so far. That's not the indication that they've given us. I haven't seen the final report, but they've indicated that they see a lot of promise here. And so I think there's an opportunity to explore it. This is a significant investment for the city. It's going to outlive us all. It's going to be here for decades to come. And so what we're proposing is at least looking at what options you have before making a final decision.
Great. So all those financing options and whether to go P3, whether to use debt, that's a question for another day after we have the benefit of that information to come back. Right. I guess I would just, one slight thing, I would reframe the way you've described it. Our goal, in my view, is not to have a thriving asset, because a thriving asset, you know, if it's a thriving asset that doesn't produce revenues to the city's general fund and economic revitalization to the surrounding area, a thriving asset doesn't do us any good. We could get a lot of, you know, other local shows and so on in there that would make it thrive, but which would contribute nothing to our bottom line, or essentially nothing, and wouldn't add considerably to the economic vitality of the area. So thriving is important, but if it's just going to thrive without benefit to the city, then we might as well just sell it and let somebody else have it thrive. I'm going to want to make sure that there's a significant return on our investment if we're going to make a substantial investment in this property.
Got it.
And that the investment is sustainable over the long
You
term. And I think that's certainly values that we all share.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions at this point? I'm going to recommend that we approve the report as amended with item 1. Actually, it's, I want to move the Convention Center Commercial Paper Program to be used in a limited capacity to fund costs in fiscal year 15-16 in the amount of $1.5 million for the following: BOE contractual services for sequel-related activities and BOE staffing. That totals $1.5 million. As a provision, as a preliminary allocation. Good. Any other discussion?
Can I just ask, because I didn't hear from Mr. Santana about the source of funding for that. Is that, I'm sorry, how much, what's the total?
$1.5 million.
$1.5 million for pre-development activities. Is that consistent with our MICLA capabilities and eligibility?
Yes, so we in our report, we list out a series of options for you to consider. There are, there has been a special commercial paper program that's been established. It is part of our overall capacity. To be clear, it is part of our overall debt capacity.
And we had already set that actually aside.
And that was designed for purposes of fixing the roof and other things that were necessary. So what I'm hearing Mr. Price say is that to proceed with, if you go on page 5, on option 1 in what was articulated in our report.
For pre-development expenses.
Okay.
Pre-development
Up to
expenses.
1.5.
Makes good sense to me.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion? Any other questions? That will be the order.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, item number 2. Mr. Clerk?
Item number 2 is a Los Angeles Department of Water and Power report in response to motion Fuentes Blumenfield relative to the status of the Enterprise Empowerment Zone rate subsidy program and its impact on economic development and job creation in Los Angeles and related matters.
Okay, we have LADWP in the house with a riveting review of the Enterprise Empowerment Zone rate subsidy program. The floor is yours.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Keisha Washington. I'm the Director of Economic Development. And to my right is Neil Guglielmo, who's our Director of Budget. Good job. And next to me is Meg Barclay from the Economic and Workforce Development Department. Before you is a report prepared in response to the demise of CRA and the department's inability to offer the enterprise zone rates with the legislation that was adopted a couple of years ago. Once it became clear that we no longer had the authority to offer the discounted rate, which was 35% over a 5-year period, we in economic development went back. We worked with our rates group. We worked with legal, as well as with some outside stakeholders, including EWDD, to see what our options were, keeping in mind Prop 26 and our inability to have a gift of public funds. We were looking for a cost-based way of incentivizing businesses to locate in LA. What we came up with is a program that's going to allow us to discount a bill credit over a 3-year period, a discounted bill credit. So it's 7.6, 5%, and 2.5%. That is a credit off of the bill. It's going to be capped at 80 megawatts, which means we're going to limit our participation at 80 megawatts. That's based in part on our IRP. What we did is we forecasted our quote-unquote excess capacity and determined that these are costs that we hadn't had full payment for, and we're going to be able to bear those costs with new customers. Keep in mind, in the past, the enterprise zone rate actually included additional load. We're not able to do that. We're only going after new load. The way that we plan on doing this is the Economic Development Group, which is my group, we will actually have an application process. It'll be paper-based initially. We're then looking to having one that's going to be computer-based to accept the applications. We're going to do a very targeted outreach. We want to make sure that we're attracting businesses all over the city, but there's some areas of the city that honestly could use more love than others. Again, focused on new load, we're going to work with our partners at LAEDC, at the Valley Economic Alliance, at any and all groups that are looking to bring in new businesses. We will work with the Economic and Workforce Development Department to create an application that allows them and us to track key data points. That includes the type of businesses, the number of jobs, the types of jobs. That's information that we currently don't have, and to be able to help us predict on a going forward basis. Are there industries we need to target? Do they need a little bit more assistance? The other good point about DWP collecting the initial applications, it gives us the opportunity to also encourage these customers to take advantage of all of our programs. Everything from the solar program to water conservation measures to energy efficiency measures. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So is 80 watts versus the 200 watts that we had with the prior program, is that going to be enough?
Well, first, it's 80
Is the
megawatts.
program going to be undersubscribed?
It's 80 megawatts, and
What did I
that's
say?
not 80 watts.
It's 80
Megawatts.
megawatts, okay.
Yeah.
Versus the 200.
Versus the 200 megawatts in the past. We're going to see. So here's the thing. It's a rolling basis.
So there's still a big difference.
There is a big difference. I don't remember how subscribed we were at the end of it. The other thing, honestly, to keep in mind is the first time we had the enterprise zone rates, the bill discounts were a lot more significant, 35% versus 7.6%. That's a big delta. We're going to look at it. Again, we have to base it on our cost of service and available capacity. So whereas we would like to do more and offer more, it has to be based on something.
Mm-hmm. And are you going to have geographic limitations, or is it just going to be strictly for new businesses that DWP serves?
New businesses that DWP serves. We're going to, in terms of geographic limitations, I want to be clear. What we're going to do is there are areas in the city where we really want to encourage, but anyone can apply throughout the city, locations in the city.
So I know that we no longer have enterprise zones and empowerment zones members, but the reason I ask this question is because those were established to support communities that historically had been underserved and otherwise disadvantaged, I just want to ensure that the program is also capturing those neighborhoods. And to be fair, if we're going to give incentives through the entire city, it's great, but I also want to make sure that a certain percentage captures these communities that historically have been underserved. So I don't know how we can do that. Perhaps we can allot a percentage of the wattage so that these underserved communities, we can still capture these underserved communities. I just want to be fair.
And I totally get that. We are going to do targeted outreach, but I'm going to ask Brian to come up and put legal on the spot. I want to be very cognizant. I don't want to say that we're going to target an area.
I want to support a program, but I want to support a program that's going to benefit new businesses in my district.
I'm going to ask legal to the table.
And maybe you can also help me figure out, can we also encourage the participation of minority and women entrepreneurs, and how do they take advantage of such a program?
Right. Let me address that first, Brian, then I'll let you go back to the other question. Right now, we're doing everything we can to encourage all small businesses. We're doing targeted outreach with, for example, NABO, WeBank, the SCMSDC, with NAMAC, and with others, not just on this, but on all of our programs. Part of my mission at the Department of Water and Power is looking at how do I grow small businesses in the city of LA. So I'm looking at efforts to target them, especially when they can be service providers in turn for our customers. So, for example, one of the outreaches that we plan on having is working with the Association of Asian Architects and Engineers and NAMAC, the National Association of Minority Contractors, to educate them on all of the programs that DWP has, but more importantly, so when they're out working with their customers and their clients saying, by the way, did you realize if you did this measure, DWP has an incentive to go along with that to help them build their business, but also it helps us achieve our sustainability goals.
I think we also want to just kind of track how you're doing on that outreach, because it is so important, especially in underserved areas. I hope you'll also engage the council offices in that effort.
I just want to go back to my question in terms of how can a certain percentage of the wattage be reserved for previous enterprise zones?
Well, did you want previous enterprise zones?
Because that to me, these incentives should encourage new businesses and communities like mine, like Panorama City and parts of my district after the enterprise zone. There's no development going in. And so how do we incentivize new businesses or business growth in my district by possibly utilizing a program such as this? I'm sorry, I know you, Mr.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. That's fine.
And Brian, are you prepared? And I want to tweak the question a little bit.
Because we no longer have the enterprise zones and the empowerment zones. Those are.
Brian Stewart, Deputy City Attorney. How's everyone doing? As Ms. Washington just indicated, in order to get customers or new customers to go into these areas that maybe could use more economic development, targeted outreach and so forth, and marketing, I think are beneficial. As far as the ability to offer discounts just in particular parts of the city as opposed to others, we're kind of in a new paradigm now from where we were before. This is sort of a pending, there's pending litigation related to Prop 26 and power rates, so I don't want to go too deep into it. It might be a matter for closed session as we bring forward the new rate proposal. But the short of it is that Prop 26 requires a connection to cost to serve, and with this particular discount, what we've been able to find is that there is excess generation capacity spread, kind of throughout the city that's available citywide, and that's the essence of what the discount is right now. In terms of targeting specific areas of the system, it's really the department has kind of studied that, as I understand it, and has found that that's somewhat limited ability to do that at this time. So they may be able to do more analysis on that in the future, but I think as to what they've done now, I don't think that may be an available option based on the information we have today.
I don't know what that means, what you just said. I just want to be fair and be very clear that I don't want all these incentives to be used up by communities who have not faced the same type of economic disadvantages that other communities have. And so if you can help me figure out a way where we can capture some of these communities, to be fair.
And I would just add to my colleagues' comments, it is extremely frightening when you hear the response to her question be that we're going to do outreach. Because outreach doesn't say anything about what the outcome will be. And outreach doesn't have on it any requirements that it actually produces results. And so it seems like there ought to be something. Again, outreach is important and information is important, but it seems like there ought to be something we're able to do so that we're not here a year from now and we find out that all the benefits got used in the least needy parts of the city, which from what I'm hearing, there's no indication that won't happen.
I'd like to take a stab at that. I will commit to working with the Economic and Workforce Development Department to see whether or not we can go in the future and look at, are there other federal or other criteria, if there are federal designations of certain areas, be an LMI or HUD zones, and to see whether or not, and working with legal, whether or not we have the authority to either do a set-aside or do something extra and above for those areas. The second thing that it's always been our intent, and I think that we're pretty good, at least stuff that I've done in the past. We're very good at reporting out the things that we do. It is our commitment to work with each and every council office, as well as some of the other community stakeholders out there. We can have the greatest programs known to man. If we don't get them out there and we don't have participation utilization, then it's been a great program on paper.
Mr. Chair, can I ask that the CLA's office work with DWP and the department to create guidelines so that we capture new businesses in underserved communities?
And I'd add,
Is the CLA's office here? I don't want to miss an opportunity and not have my question asked and addressed.
Absolutely. One thought occurred to me during the discussion is in the jobs committee, they've been talking about AB2 and the new zones that can be created through there, as well as the IFDs, as well as the JEDI zones. And so we might be able to look at those and see if this is an opportunity to connect those programs, which would have a geographic factor, to this program.
Perfect. Okay.
And with that, if I'm piggybacking on the comments my colleagues made, I think we should report back. I think we should get some kind of report on what the plan is going to be for outreach. We'd like to see that plan before it rolls out. Okay. So kind of what the process is going to be, what the strategy is, and how we're going to capture potential users who've not been able to take advantage of this program in the past. Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, John. I was thinking the very same thing. But I have a more fundamental question that I'm not fully understanding from the report. I'm trying to understand the concept of the new load limitation and what that means in practical effect. Is this are only new businesses that are new to Los Angeles going to be eligible for this?
Yes.
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 Okay. I don't want to prejudge, but I don't think that's meaningful economic development, because no business is going to make a siting decision. No business is going to make a siting decision based on a 7.5% discount on their DWP bill. They're just not. Expansion of existing businesses, for example, might be encouraged by something like this, but if existing businesses aren't eligible to apply for it, then I have real concerns over whether this ratepayer money being devoted for economic development is being devoted to a program that's going to be cost effective, because I'm only interested in helping businesses with any kind of a government, I don't want to call it a subsidy, but an incentive, if it actually incentivizes behavior. And this is not going to be that. How much is in a typical business electrical bill, how much is a 7.5% discount?
The discount for a 100 kilowatt business, which would be the minimum for this program, the average monthly savings would be roughly $500.
Yeah, so there is no business in America that's going to move to Los Angeles based on $500 or $5,000. They're just not. They're not going to, endure all the other burdens of doing business here in Los Angeles for this kind. I mean, it's a gallant effort, and I appreciate it. But I'm only going to be interested in supporting incentives that change behavior, and I don't see it here. What I would love to see is a program like this that existing businesses can apply for. When they add jobs, when they add space, when they do things like that, and add load to the system based on that. If they have increased activity level, which is increasing the load. Why is that different than when a new business arrives and adds load?
So, Councilmember Neil Guglielmo with Water and Power. I suggest that maybe we could have a discussion with Councilman Martinez separately on this issue with the legal team.
That'd be great.
Because we've tried to structure something that we felt would be within the constraints that we foresee.
I get it, and I get how
but we're happy to have
constrained
the
you are.
conversation with you.
We're trying to
It's not for lack of effort. Believe me, I get it, and I think you've really, and I really appreciate this, because this, I should mention, and I should have said this at the outset. This report is signaling kind of a sea change in DWP, and I thank you for it, because businesses have been waiting for a long time to see a more active role of DWP as a partner in, how can I phrase this in a way that council's not going to object to? Not just in economic development, but in making the most cost-effective utilization of our power system, and creating some jobs in the process. I think businesses have waited for that. Thank you for this. It shows that we're on the right track. I just want to make sure that we're using a program that's actually going to create jobs and create new load, actual new load, and create. I mean, a business that moves, for example, from West LA to Pacoima is the same business, not adding any new load, It's not a new business, not eligible for this program, but that goes to the heart of what Councilmember Martinez was just talking about. So anyway, I think there's more that I want to find out about how this interfaces with the other things that John was mentioning that we'll talk about in the ad hoc. But I do appreciate that we're on the right track in moving in this direction.
Okay, we're just trying to give you some more tools, that's all.
So we're bringing this back, or what do you?
We're going to, we'll bring it back. Let's, first of all, any other questions, any other comments? Okay. Madam Clerk, why don't you read the...
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
just to summarize what the committee is proposing, is to ask the departments to report back on the outreach program, as well as request CLA to work with DWP and EWDD to create guidelines. And would the committee like to concur with the actions of the Energy and Environment Committee, which was to note and file the DWP report and to request the report back prior to the program launch in October?
Yes, I think that summarizes it all. Okay. All right, without objection, that will be the order. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one last thing to clarify for item 1. Does the committee want to approve the CLA recommendations in addition to CAO report number option 1 as amended?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do. Okay. Is there any other business before us at this time?
No, sir.
This meeting is adjourned.